If you're keeping up with us as we go through our walk through the Bible this year, we're in Matthew chapter 23. And this is our Lord's last public message in Matthew. It's a scathing denunciation of this false religion that's going on in Jerusalem. And I want to divide this into three sections. There are only 39 verses. And so as you read through chapter 23 today, the first section gives us some characteristics of false teachers. He called them scribes and Pharisees, that's what they were, but they were false teachers. And so there are a couple of characteristics that really jump out to us in verses 1 through 12. He goes right at them, Jesus does, and he says, do whatever they tell you and observe it. After all, if they're teaching what his word says, go ahead and do it. But then he says, do whatever they tell you and observe it, but don't do what they do, because they don't practice what they teach. Oh, you've heard it said many times, you need to walk your talk. If you talk this way, walk this way. You need to practice what you preach. You've heard that statement before. So these leaders had the characteristics. One of the characteristics is they didn't do what they would say. So Jesus is giving you this characteristic. He's letting you know, don't be like them. There's another characteristic. In verse 5, he says it this way. They do everything to be seen by others. Did you hear what's going on there? They're worried about what men see. And the Old Testament says it this way. Man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks where? On the heart, inside. And so the first 12 verses, you have some characteristics of false teachers. Then in verses 13 all the way up to 33, you have the condemnation. The Lord's just going right at them. He says, here are their characteristics. And now he's going to condemn what they do. And he uses the word woe, W-O-E, woe to you. And here's what he says, verses 13 and following. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. For you don't go in, and you don't allow those entering to go in. Verse 15, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! Man, he's not holding back any punches. So verse 13, woe to you. Verse 15, woe to you. Verse 16, woe to you, blind guides. Verse 23, woe to you. Verse 25, woe to you. Verse 27 and 29, woe to you. He's just going at them, and he says, I can't believe how you're telling people to live this way, and you're not living this way. So he gives the characteristics, and then he gives the condemnation. You have to live differently. And how does he end chapter 23? Well, he ends it with some judgment on Jerusalem. After all, they should be so open to him, but they weren't. And here's how he concludes it. Let me go to verse 37. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, who kills the prophets and stones those that are sent to her? How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. Oh, did you hear that? I wonder how often the Lord wants to come and gather us to himself. And then that condemnation, you were not willing. Sometimes little kids, when you say, hey, can I pick you up? Can I give you a hug? Sometimes they run into your arms, and other times they no, they don't want that. They're not willing. I'm wondering if you're that way when it comes to the Lord. So let me conclude with this. Will you practice what you preach before others? And as you go through this text today, will you say, Lord, I want to be different than the Jerusalem that you talked about there. I want to be willing. Gather me close to yourself today.